Hi there, I'm Claire Whalen, and you're listening to the Claire in a Chair podcast.
And I know I can tell you anything. You won't judge, you're just listening. Yeah.
Hi there, and welcome to this week's episode. Today we have a very, very exciting interview planned up, but before we get into that, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Dwell and Adorn. Dwell and Adorn is a boutique located on Memorial, and check out my website for more information about their shopping, prices, and what they have in store. I personally love their stuff so much. I got this vase from there, as I mentioned before, and check out my Instagram for some reels about what I got from them. Thank you so much to Dwell and Adorn for sponsoring the Claire in a Chair podcast. Now let's get into our interview. I am so excited you are here today because today's episode is one I truly believe could save somebody's life. Most of us never expect to be an emergency. We assume someone else will know what to do or that it could never happen to us. But what if one day you're the only person there? Would you know how to help? Today's guest is Gail Gould, better known as the CPR and Safety Lady. After a terrifying experience involving her young son, Gail dedicated her life to making sure ordinary people, not just doctors or nurses, have the confidence and skills to respond when every second counts. In this episode, we're talking about why every single teenager should learn CPR, the warning signs of medical emergencies that are often overlooked, why people freeze in high-pressure situations, and how just a few minutes of training could one day help you save somebody's life. Whether you're a student, a parent, or just someone who wants to be prepared, I know you'll walk away from this conversation feeling more confident and empowered. So let's jump right in. Here's my conversation with Gail Gould, the CPR and Safety Lady. Hi there, thank you so much for joining me on the Claire in a Chair podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Claire.
Of course. For listeners who may not know you, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became known as the CPR and Safety Lady?
Yes, thank you so much for asking. Well, my name is Gail Gould. I'm also known as the CPR and Safety Lady. I've been a professional CPR instructor for 35 years.
That's incredible.
Trained 10,000 people to save lives. My mission is twofold. First of all, to CPR train as many people as possible because you never know when you might need to use it. And second of all, for no one to ever have to lose their life to choking. We can talk a lot about choking. But the way I started, Claire, was a group exercise instructor for many, many, many years.
Yes.
And I kind of got tired of being in a leotard. So when I was like 34, I went back to graduate school at University of Houston, and I got a graduate degree in exercise science. And I loved it. I loved being in graduate school. It was so much fun. In fact, people that I met, I'm still friends with all these years later. And so when I got out of graduate school, I was getting married, and I decided I wanted to try and work for myself because that had always been a goal for myself. And I remember sitting in my office in my home and calling these companies. This is back in the day you could actually call people, like back in 1989. And I would ask them, are you interested in how to start an exercise class? I'd say, are you interested in CPR first aid? They all wanted CPR first aid. And so that's kind of how I got started. And, I was working with these Fortune 500 companies. It was so fortunate. I have a couple of oil and gas firms, global oil and gas companies, and engineering firms that have been my clients for 25, 30 years. And it's so much fun. That's kind of how it got started. Now, it started off kind of slow, and so I had to find alternate ways to supplement my income. So I was my CPR training business just kept growing and growing and growing, and that's kind of how I got started.
That's incredible. CPR is something only doctors, nurses, or lifeguards need to know. Why do you believe every teen should learn it?
Oh my gosh. Everybody needs to know this. Everybody. So, Claire, this year in the United States, around 365,000 people will go into sudden cardiac arrest outside the hospital. The majority of those people will not survive. And people think, well, it's just old, out of shape people it happens to. Not true. Around 23,000 of that 365,000 are going to be kids and teenagers. It requires schools to have AEDs. Texas requires schools to have AEDs, and they're required to be in working order and a team that knows how to use them. But not all states have that. So teenagers, it happens to teenagers as well. In fact, 1 in 300 student athletes has an undetected heart problem.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it definitely happens to teenagers. I encourage all parents to get their teenager if they're 10, 11, 12 years or older, an EKG. Some people call it ECG, I call it EKG. And it's a 5 to 10 minute non-invasive test that's looking at the electrical activity of your heart. In fact, Katy ISD has had so many kids go into cardiac arrest, they bought their own EKG machines.
That is, wow.
And they screen everybody. It's so important. It's important that teenagers have it. Now, when you get to be a senior, there was legislation passed in Texas around 7 or 8 years ago that requires all seniors in high school to take a CPR class.
Thank you so much for bringing that to our attention. Why do you think that so many people freeze during or panic during emergencies, and how can we train ourselves to respond instead?
It's a really good question.
Thank you.
People often freeze because they don't know what to do. In fact, I read a statistic a few years ago. It said 70%, that's a 70, 70% of parents would have no idea what to do if their child had a medical or injury emergency. I mean, that's scary.
Yeah.
And so if you've never taken a CPR class, what are you going to do if someone loses consciousness? You're going to run for help. And that's not good, because when you're running for help, their brain is dying. So and people often say to me, Claire, they'll go, oh, I just need to refresh my skills. I was like, well, when's the last time you took a CPR class? They said, oh, about 8 or 10 years ago. I was like, that's not refreshing skills.
That's relearning.
Yeah, but why do you think doctors, nurses, first responders have to take CPR every 2 years? Because they forget it. If you're not using it on a regular basis, you forget it. So I have people, like I taught a class yesterday out over near U of H, and there were 3 people in the class that have already done my class twice. They did it 4 years ago, 2 years ago, now they did it now. So yeah, I mean, if you do it on a regular basis, if you take CPR on a regular basis, you won't forget it. There's other parts of the world where you cannot bring your baby home from the hospital unless you've taken a CPR class. Not here in the United States, but you have to show proof of a CPR first aid card in order to get your driver's license.
Wow.
And then someone from Bosnia was in my CPR class a couple months ago. He said it's the same way in Bosnia. You have to show proof of a CPR first aid card in order to get your driver's license. Yeah, it's just important that everybody knows how to do this, because you never know when it's going to happen.
You never know.
And less than 50% of Americans know how to perform CPR. Not very many people know how to perform CPR.
What is the biggest misconception people have about CPR and emergency response?
The biggest myth? Well, right now, I think a lot of people still think you're supposed to check the pulse. There's no pulse check. All you do is you check for responsiveness and breathing. But a lot of people, they see it on TV in the movies.
Yeah, for sure.
And they think, there's no pulse checks. That's sort of one misconception. I think the other thing people are surprised about, they don't realize how quickly the brain starts to die. Your brain starts to die after about 4 minutes.
Wow.
So you don't want someone lying there unresponsive and not breathing without receiving CPR, without getting blood flow to the brain for more than 4 minutes, because they do, most likely will not survive. They've been lying there 10 minutes, no breathing, no blood flow, brain death is certain. So when I've asked that question, I'll ask in my class, I'll say, how long can someone go without blood flow to the brain before they die? People go 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 4 minutes. So that's why, you don't have much time. And you absolutely, the other thing has to do with choking. All parents need to know, all new parents need to know how to perform CPR. In fact, I train a lot of new and expectant parents, Claire.
If you could leave every listener with one piece of advice about being prepared, helping others, and potentially saving a life, what would it be?
Take a CPR class. Take a CPR class. Sometimes I think people think that they're just too busy.
Yeah.
They're too busy to do it. But absolutely take a CPR and a first aid class. It's just so important that everybody needs to know how to do this.
How can people find you online and take a quick course that could eventually lead to save a life?
Thank you so much for asking.
Of course.
Well, on Instagram, I'm at the CPR and Safety Lady. And my website is www.cprandsafetylady.com. And it's just, I love what I do. I feel so grateful that I found my purpose in life. It's really just given me a lot of purpose. I kind of feel like a late bloomer because I kind of took a circuitous route to get here, but I love what I do. It's so much fun, and thank you so much for having me. I love talking about it.
Of course. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your mission so authentically. It was beautiful to hear. So thank you so much. Everyone go check out her website and learn CPR so that you can potentially save somebody's life. Thank you so much.
And I know I can tell you anything. You won't judge, you're just listening.